I refused to let my neighbor store his construction equipment in my yard. The next morning, my dog's kennel was flattened and he said, "Should have let us build something together." That afternoon, I found nails hammered into my doorframe. I installed a camera, and what it caught that night wasn't him, but his daughter, holding my spare key. Anne. I've lived in Byram, Mississippi for over 15 years. It's not a big place. Most people here wave when they drive by. You mind your own business, take care of your land, and folks respect that. I'm not married. Never had kids. I spent most of my life turning wrenches, and when my back gave out a few years ago, I retired early and started enjoying the quiet. Tank is my dog. Big pit mix with a crooked tail and the kind of bark that keeps strangers at the gate. He sleeps outside in a kennel I built by hand. Heavy fencing, concrete floor, shaded roof. That kennel's stronger than most sheds. He loves it out there, even prefers it over the house. Everything was fine until Keith moved in next door. He's the kind of neighbor that makes you want to sell. Loud trucks, music blasting while he works, beer cans in his yard. He calls himself a contractor, but what he really does is buy old equipment, park it everywhere, and take weeks to move it. A week ago, he came to my door, uninvited, with a toothpick hanging out his mouth and sawdust on his shirt. He walked halfway onto my porch before I even opened the door. "Hey man," he said, already looking past me into my yard. "You got space behind that shed, right? Mind if I stash some equipment there for a few days?" I didn't even let him finish. "No. Not interested." He laughed like I was being cute. "Come on, it's just a few skid steers. Ain't gonna be forever." I looked him dead in the eye. "I don't want it on my property." That's when his whole face changed. The fake charm dropped. He gave me this look, like I'd crossed him somehow. "All right," he said. "Guess we ain't buildin' nothin' together, huh?" Then he turned and walked off without waiting for anything else. Next morning, I walked outside to feed Tank and nearly dropped the bowl. His kennel was flattened. Like someone drove a damn truck through it. The metal was twisted, the gate was ripped off, and the roof had collapsed in. Tank was limping, his leg bleeding, but thankfully still alert. I rushed him to the vet. Sprained leg and some cuts. Nothing life-threatening. But I was shaking with rage. While I was cleaning up the wreckage that afternoon, Keith came out onto his driveway. He was holding a cup of coffee, just watching. Then he said it. "Should have let us build something together." He smiled like he was proud of himself. I didn't say a word. I just stared at him until he went back inside. That evening, while I was replacing the lock on my shed, I noticed something odd. My back door frame had nails in it. Not normal nails. These were old, rusty, bent sideways like someone hammered them in just to be a pain in the ass. Some were sticking out at sharp angles. They weren't there the day before. I pulled every one out, took photos, and threw them in a plastic bag. I didn't feel safe. That night I went online, ordered a set of cameras. They arrived the next day, and I had them up and running before the sun went down. One above the back door. One facing the yard. One on the front porch. I expected to catch Keith poking around. Maybe trying to dump his crap in my yard at night. What I got was worse. Around 2:14 in the morning, the back door camera triggered. It wasn't Keith. It was his daughter, Harper. She looked straight into the camera and smiled. That same smug little grin Keith wears when he thinks he's clever. She was maybe 14 or 15. Long blonde hair, oversized hoodie, flip-flops. She walked right up to the potted plant by the door, where I used to keep my spare key, and lifted it like she'd done it before. She took the key, opened the door, went inside. Stayed for 23 minutes. Next morning, nothing looked out of place. No drawers open. Nothing stolen that I could tell. But I felt like I'd been violated. That little girl had no business being in my house. And she didn't just happen to find that key. She knew exactly where it was. Which meant one thing. Someone told her. Probably Keith. I didn't call the cops yet. I needed more. I needed to know what they were really up to. Why the hell send a kid into my home in the middle of the night? What were they looking for? I changed the locks. Hid the new key inside a locked safe. Moved my valuables to a storage unit 20 minutes out of town. Then I sat and waited. And I didn't have to wait long. The next night I stayed up. I didn't turn on any lights. Just sat in the dark living room with Tank on the couch beside me, still favoring his front leg. I had the live camera feed on my laptop. Midnight passed. Then 1. Nothing. At 2:17 a.m., motion alert. Same camera. Back door. But it wasn't Harper this time. It was Keith. He walked up slow, like he was checking for lights or movement. He looked straight into the lens. Didn't smile. Just stared like he was trying to intimidate it. Then he pulled out something from his jacket, looked like a crowbar, and tested the door. He didn't know I'd changed the locks. He tried anyway. Tank growled low. I stepped to the back door, slow and quiet, holding my pistol, not to shoot, but just in case. Keith jiggled the handle again, pressed his face to the glass, then muttered something I couldn't hear. He backed off after a minute and left the same way he came. I checked the feed from the previous night again. Looked closer. That time Harper went straight into the hallway closet. That's where I keep my gun safe. And that's when it clicked. They weren't just screwing with me. They were looking for something specific. I checked the safe. Everything was still there. Locked tight. But the keypad had smudges on it. More than usual. Like someone had tried guessing the code. They were trying to get my guns. This wasn't just trespassing. This wasn't just some neighborhood beef. This was a setup. So I started digging. I talked to my friend Caleb, who works part-time for the sheriff's office doing admin work. He couldn't say much, but when I asked if there were any reports or complaints about Keith, he hesitated. Then he said, "Off the record? There's a file. Apparently Keith had some run-ins before. Not criminal charges, but noise complaints, property disputes. One neighbor said he threatened their teenage son over a parking spot. But the most interesting thing? 2 years ago, a man in Biloxi accused Keith of stealing firearms out of his garage. Nothing proven. No charges. Just insufficient evidence. The guy moved after that. It was a pattern. Keith gets close, acts friendly, finds a way into your property, and somehow knows where you keep things. Now I was the target. I still hadn't gone to the police. I needed to make sure I had something they couldn't ignore. I kept the footage, backed up everything to a drive and cloud account. Then I made a plan. I went to the pawn shop and bought a decoy safe. Looked almost identical to mine. I filled it with scrap metal, some fake paperwork, and 2 BB guns that looked real. Put it in the same closet and moved the real one into a hidden floor compartment under my bedroom carpet, something I'd built years ago just for emergencies. The next few nights, nothing. Then Friday came. And everything exploded. I came home from picking up dog food, and my front door was open. Tank was going nuts in the truck. I ran inside. The place was trashed. Drawers pulled out, kitchen cabinets open, cushions slashed. They even broke into the shed. The fake safe? Gone. I checked the cameras. All 3 had been ripped out and smashed. But the footage uploaded before they were destroyed. Clear as day, Keith and Harper. Gloves on, hoodies up, daylight. Middle of the afternoon. I called the sheriff's office. They took the report, watched the footage, and for the first time, they took it seriously. A deputy named Morales told me they'd been watching Keith for a while but couldn't pin anything on him. This might change that. But that wasn't good enough for me. I wasn't just going to sit and hope the law figured it out. Keith had tried to destroy my home, scare me, and drag his own daughter into it. He made it personal. So I decided to make it personal right back. Next door, Keith was still pretending nothing happened. Still drinking on his porch. Still playing music. Still smirking at me across the fence like he thought he won. He had no idea what I was about to do. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wreckage in my living room. Broken blinds. Torn couch cushions. My tools scattered on the floor. I kept hearing Keith's voice in my head. Should have let us build something together. This wasn't just about stealing. This was about control. So I called a friend of mine, Mason. We used to work together back when I was still a mechanic. He's a welder now. Handy guy. Does work under the table, no questions asked. He's also the kind of guy who doesn't like bullies. I told him what happened. He came over the next day, took one look at the mess, and said, "Let's give them something to find." We got to work. First, I replaced all 3 busted cameras. Then we added 2 more, hidden inside fake birdhouses I mounted on fence posts. I added a trail cam in the back, pointed toward the alley behind both our houses. Motion activated, no wires to cut. Mason helped me fix the back gate and reinforce the new kennel for Tank. We built it out of scrap steel and bolted it into concrete. It wasn't just a kennel anymore. It was a damn vault. Then we did something else. We staged the inside of my house. Made it look like I replaced the safe with a new one. We left it in plain sight, with a few important papers sticking out the side, just enough to catch attention. It was bolted to the floor, but the bolts were fake. All they had to do was pull hard enough. And inside? A little surprise. Mason rigged a bait package. Nothing dangerous. Just a dye pack, the kind banks use, same chemical that stains your skin and doesn't come off for days. We also tucked a Bluetooth tracker in there, in case they took it. 3 nights later they came back. I watched it happen from my truck, parked down the road with the windows cracked. It was just Harper this time. She came through the side gate, same hoodie, gloves on. She moved fast, like she'd done it before. Slipped through the kitchen window we intentionally left unlocked. She went straight for the safe. 10 minutes later, she came out the back door holding it in both hands. Tossed it into a backpack, climbed the fence, and disappeared into the alley. She never saw the camera on the birdhouse. Never saw the trail cam behind the fence. I called the deputy the next morning and gave them everything. That same day, Keith came storming onto my lawn. "You set her up!" he screamed, his face beet red. "You called the cops on a kid!" I stepped out with my phone recording, made sure he saw it. "You sent her into my house twice. You trashed my place. You stole from me. You got no proof of that." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Actually, I do. All of it. And they have it now, too." He charged at me like he was gonna throw a punch. Tank barked so loud Keith stopped mid-step. Then 3 cop cars pulled up at once. One of the deputies stepped out and said, "Keith Turner, hands where we can see them." They arrested him right there. Harper was picked up that evening. But that's not the twist. The twist came later that week, when I got a visit from someone I wasn't expecting. A woman named Carla, Keith's ex-wife. She said she saw the story on the local news. Came all the way from Biloxi. Said she wanted to talk. Said she needed to tell me something about Keith. And that's when I found out, this whole thing went way deeper than I ever imagined. Carla sat across from me at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she barely touched. She looked tired. Like someone who'd been running from the same problem for too long. She didn't waste time. "I know you think Keith was just a petty thief," she said, "but you need to understand, he's been doing this for years. And he uses Harper to get away with it." I didn't say anything. Just let her talk. She went on. "Back in Biloxi, he used to fix up houses. Same routine, get close to neighbors, borrow tools, ask for favors. Then things would go missing. Little things at first. Then bigger. Guns. Jewelry. Cash. He always made it look like someone else. Sometimes even claimed he was the one being targeted. I asked, why didn't anyone report him? They did. But Keith's good at two things: lying, and making people feel stupid for trusting him. That man could cry on cue. Make a sheriff doubt his own report. And Harper? She wasn't always like this. But he dragged her into it. She started learning from him. How to lie. How to sneak. She thinks it's normal. I clenched my jaw. She broke into my home. 3 times. If I hadn't locked up my real safe, she could have walked off with 3 loaded weapons. Carla nodded slowly. I know. And I'm not asking you to forgive her. But I came here because I want this to stop. For good. That same week, I found out Harper got released into Carla's custody while Keith was held on multiple charges: trespassing, theft, destruction of property, contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and burglary. The stolen safe with the dye pack? That alone tied her and Keith to the break-in. On top of that, the cameras sealed it. Keith's lawyer tried to spin it, said I baited them. Claimed the trap made the whole thing entrapment. Didn't work. The sheriff's office had enough. The DA had enough. And I had more than enough. But still, it wasn't over. Because 2 weeks later, someone keyed my truck. Deep. Ugly gouges across both doors. And left a note under the windshield. You ain't safe. No camera caught it. But I knew who it was. So I made one final call, to a man named Reggie. Reggie owns the scrapyard Keith used to frequent. He's also one of those guys who knows everybody's dirt but never speaks on it unless you give him a reason. I gave him one. I told him everything. Showed him the footage. Explained how Keith had tried to set me up. How he used his own daughter to break in. Reggie didn't say much. Just nodded and muttered, "Dumb son of a bitch's been burning bridges a long time. Guess he finally ran out." 3 days later, Keith's trailer, the one he used for contracting, was towed off his property by the county. Turns out, it was full of unregistered tools, stolen copper wire, and 2 stolen generators from a site 30 miles out. Someone tipped them off. Reggie never said a word. But I knew. After that, Keith was screwed. He couldn't post bail. He lost his license. His equipment was seized. His accounts were frozen. Harper got moved into a group counseling program after a court-mandated review said Carla needed more help than they realized. I felt bad for the kid. But some paths don't lead back. Keith ended up sentenced to 6 years minimum. No parole until 3. And in a small-town prison like the one in Parchman, that ain't gonna be easy. The last twist? A letter. Handwritten. Sloppy. Came 2 months after sentencing. It was from Keith. Said, "Hope you're proud. You ruined my life over AF **ing dog and a pile of scrap. I kept it. Framed it. Because yeah, I was proud. Not because I got revenge. But because a man who thought he could walk all over people finally tripped over someone who didn't move. And as for me? I rebuilt Tank's kennel one last time. Put up a new fence, 8 feet tall, solid oak. Reinforced the locks. Swapped out all the cameras for industrial-grade ones with infrared and cloud storage. I even replaced the spare key under the pot. Now it's a fake. Hollowed out, with a little note inside. Should have minded your own damn business. And I sleep just fine.